Good afternoon. How are you? Well, I'm doing a sit and talk because the conditions on the road and in the fields is a little treacherous, although we feed the animals, but we do it carefully and slowly, and it's with a lot of concentration. So I'm hoping tomorrow that I'll be able to get out on the road, and today I'll work out inside. Thomas Jefferson said the temperature is about 17 degrees here. A friend of mine in Montana said you don't have to worry until it's minus 30. I'm not waiting for that to happen in Virginia. I understand there's a young man out there, 5 years old, who watches this on a daily basis with his grandfather. And he was concerned I didn't mention Thomas Jefferson the other day. And I forgive me that I overlooked to do that. Thanks for the reminder. Now, what are we going to talk about today, given that I did not follow anything yesterday? And I read one story today. And the one story that I read is the one that captured my attention. Since I haven't listened to what the talking heads and other people are opining today as they run around like Chicken Little with their heads cut off, the reason I picked on it is it's about who the leader of the United States is after so many years, starting with fighting against a king, a monarch, being in charge of America, that is, and why we had a revolution. Okay, so let's start with Trump's words, which I did write down from this one article. Trump said, "Those who wish to stop our cause have tried to take my freedom and indeed to take my life." Now, this is a piece of really rotten political evil, I think. I can't think of another word for it, because consider this. He says, "our cause." He's saying this on the day he's being sworn into office. Our cause. We have different causes. And there are people in America who are concerned about whatever his cause is, and that those who want to stop our cause. So somebody wanted to stop his cause, and they wanted to stop it by ending his life. Now, who are those? As I understood it, there was only one gunman identified. And I don't know if they firmly decided they can say that or not. I assume that they have. And when he says they want to take my freedom, not just take his life, but to take his freedom. And what is the freedom he was going to lose? He was going to lose potentially the freedom that he enjoyed before committing crime. And because he committed crime, he was going to possibly lose his freedom if any judge had the nerve to sentence him to what he should have been sentenced to, time in prison and or jail. And the most obvious example are the 34 counts in Manhattan that DEA Bragg brought, which resulted in no time at all, no fine, no probation, not even a slap in the face, nothing. So, felon Trump didn't stop there. He said his life was saved for a reason. So we could see in stark terms the contrast between, in my opinion, the contrast between the myth of God and the devil that is Trump. So, you might ask, what is that comparable to? Well, there are biblical and liturgical stories that have God drowning everybody on earth except those who were lucky enough to get a spot with Noah. So is it possible that God would choose Trump to lead us? Or is it that this is a contrast between the myth of God and the devil that is Trump? Now, as a young man, I believed, as a result of the nuns and the Jesuits, and don't get me wrong, I'm not religious now, but there was a lot of wisdom in Dunbar Hills, and I thought that a good man was to help a bad man, to become better. And what I've learned over the years is that bad men are the temptations to good men or ordinary men or women to say, well, look at what he's doing. If I cheat and lie and thieve and do things like that, then, I can have all those advantages. Well, I think there's a lot of that among the maggots that are followers of Trump. Now, felon Trump said that he was saved by God to make America great again. does God choose sides in the myth that you embrace if that's your religion? And not all religions have the same cosmology, whatever you want to call it, mythical structure, symbolism. And so what they're saying is Trump, is divine and his maggot followers are the branches. Divine and the branches, that's what we have here. Now, has anybody today, and I haven't paid attention, analyzed, I think, this key aspect of the definition of who would be our president for the next 4 years? Trump also said at his immolation, you may call it an inauguration, I call it an immolation of all this valuable in the history of America, given the litany of things that he chooses to accomplish on his very first day in office. Trump said, we will not forget our Constitution, and, pay attention, we will not forget our God? Really? Is a Sikh talking about the same divinity? Is a Jew talking about the same as Christianity, which started as a sept of Judaism? What about Hindus and Buddhists? Is that our God? And what about those who are agnostic or atheistic? I personally don't believe there's a God, and I'm very comfortable with that. And so you make of your life a demonstration in the art, knowing there'll be setbacks of character and accomplishment and caring and being with other people. So, and that's not to say that you don't follow the sayings of Jesus, not memorialized until 100 years after his death, nor was there a Trinity for 300 or 400 years when some in the religion decided there should be. So Trump said, we will next forget our we will not, excuse me, it was an interesting slip. We will not forget our Constitution, and we will not forget our God. Now, our Constitution stands for the separation of church and state. So if he's saying we will not forget our God, and our Constitution says the separation of church and state, hasn't he already forgotten in his day of immolation what the Constitution says and what it means? This kind of leadership depends on people reading nothing, thinking not at all, hearing nothing they can understand. The divine right that he's invoking was invoked by George III, the king who would make us colonials, the king who would tax us through the parliament without us having representation in the parliament. It means for a king that a monarch is not accountable to an earthly authority. That is Congress, that is the court, that is also us, you and I. Because a king, his right to rule is derived from divine authority. Nor is he subject to the people. Alito and other right-wing or around the bend folk invoke what they call natural law. So that is to say that they believe there is a law transcendent, transparent to transcendence, that is not written anywhere, a natural law that only Sir Thomas could find. And the interesting thing about that is it's not written anywhere, and they're saying they follow it, and it's superior to what might be called civil law passed by state legislatures and the U.S. Congress, and the law that people like Alito and Scalia and others of this mind purportedly endorse and support. Now, is it written anywhere to seek to rid a leader, a king, is not permitted by the people? Our Constitution says we are the people. So is Trump Henry VIII? In art, Jesus invests those who would be king or our king as part of the divine right of kings. Roger II of Sicily is an example. In America, based on the statement on Immolation Day, Inauguration Day, God invests Trump directly by the words of Trump, who dare not put his hand on a Bible. Although he had two presidents, you didn't have to. Because wouldn't it be redundant if you're divine to have to put your hand and to show that you bow to God? Did he think he was Napoleon who put the crown on his own head and fulfilled the divine right of kings? And is this a person that we can trust to be equanimous to each of us? That is, to spread equal justice, to not discriminate, and goes on and on. Now, for those who are believers and who believe in a good person to follow, I don't know, some rules, some say the 10 Commandments, how could Trump be divinely chosen if he would commit adultery, if he would steal, if he would lie, he would covet women and goods? How can that person be part of the divine right of kings? And how could he be that if he is to submit to a constitution by the people? It says we the people. It doesn't say whomever we elect tells the people what's going on. In fact, it gives us powers we have not exercised. Impeachment's one of those powers, barring a president from serving because he sought to overthrow the government. And there's no better coincidence of facts that apply here than that in the same chamber where rioting took place, he was sworn to office. Some would think that instead of the weather, it was a choice to make to rub it in the nose of those who believe this nation is better than Trump. This nation is better than a fiat from some person who would calculate ways to diminish we the people, whether because they're gay or they're persons of color or they're any number of things. They come from the wrong place, that we don't want to immigrate anymore, that America is first, that we're going to have tariffs. And my eyes did scan some of the other stories, which I guess I'll go into in the days ahead as we see how they unfold, including, pulling people out of buildings in Chicago and sending them away. Tell me that is not going to be, I can't think of a polite way to put it. So what we have is we have the first steps toward a new unwritten law, which is basically to overturn the meaning of these cabinet officers as they've existed for hundreds of years, always developing, always improving. Cabinets were very small at first. Secretary of State appeared to be the pathway to becoming president, if you ask John Adams or Thomas Jefferson. So what can we expect to come up now? I expect we're going to see a lot of litigation in court. I expect we're going to see not enough people who know the job to do it right. I expect there's going to be terrible pain and suffering among those people who are going to be subject to this novel way of constricting America, destroying freedoms once had, destroying equality, destroying our reputation abroad for being a place open to those who seek asylum having been punished elsewhere. That they're going to find us doing transactions rather than swearing to help a nation state under siege like Ukraine. And I expect we may see even worse things happen in the Middle East, because it appears that Trump and the Republican Party have taken it upon themselves to cut a deal with Putin of Russia at the cost of Ukraine. And similarly, in Israel, that I'm afraid we're going to see excesses that compromise other people who themselves were responsible for war crimes, as was Israel. But the war crime and the people that are at risk that we should be concerned about in a transactional world of foreign policy may not exist. I'm talking about the non-combatants, the mothers, the children, killed lest they survive and go on and resist as young adults or irritants because they seek the freedom that we claim in words exists but are hard to find for certain of our neighbors and friends. If we learned anything from taking a day off, those who did, it was a meditation in ways that we hadn't anticipated. We probably thought, well, we take the day off and that would be our protest. But in taking that step, it became less an embargo and more a meditation on what's wrong with America when Trump is at the head of our government. So that's what I have to say, and I pledge not to forget Thomas Jefferson in the future. So have a good evening, and I'll be out on the road tomorrow if I can, or otherwise I'll do a sit and talk. All the best. Bye-bye.